Hey guys, welcome back to the Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is Pro Revenge Story. I was discussing the sub with a good friend, and he said, "Boy, have I got a story that'll fit." It wasn't his story, but his brother's, and I sat with him and got the details. Buckle up, it's a good one, and a long one. Let's call him Mike. Mike has been fiddling with computers since he was a kid, and knows them pretty well. As with most IT people, he's moved from job to job. The employer he worked for was a service distribution company, and there were 2 IT employees. The company was located in Ontario, Canada. Around early 2023, Mike's employer decided to modernize their software. They had separate programs for dispatching, for inventory, for payroll and finances, and it was complicated moving information from one program to the other. The boss called me into his office one day, Mike told his brother. He said, "We can't keep working like this. Every department is using different software and nothing talks to each other." They decided to get an ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning program, and Mike recommended one that he knew inside out from a previous employer. For those of you who don't know, an ERP program handles everything: purchase orders, sales, inventory, personnel, vendors, customers, all of it. You can run a report and find out which customer has bought the most part ABC in the last year. Which salesman has improved his numbers the most? Which vendor has the fastest delivery time? Which shipper packed the most orders? Everyone in the company used the ERP program, but it was very complicated, and they used the aspects of it that related to their position. For example, the receiver would accept a shipment, verify the quantity, confirm it was received, and the inventory stats would be available to the salespeople if they wanted to look up how many were on hand. The receiver didn't care what the price was or who the vendor was, he just did his job. Mike was run ragged during the implementation process, but he managed to train most of the employees on their aspects, and after a few months, everything was running fairly smoothly. Mike still got tickets for tweaks in the operation of the software and occasional hardware IT issues. "I was working 12-hour days for months," Mike explained. "Every time I fixed one thing, 3 more people would show up at my desk with questions." Then in mid-2024, the company decided to expand their footprint and was marketing into different time zones. That messed things up. Atlantic Canada is 90 minutes early, so if someone sent an email or an order at 8 a.m. their time, it would arrive at 6:30 a.m. Ontario time. Pacific Canada is 3 hours late, so an email sent at 3 p.m. Vancouver time would arrive at 6 p.m. This stretched out the day, so many staff came in early and worked late. Mike would arrive at 8 a.m., and there would be people that demanded his immediate assistance and were annoyed that he didn't respond instantly, even though their request was submitted before his start time. Same with late in the day, his phone would ring at dinner time with people that wanted help right now. "I'd be sitting down to eat with my girlfriend and my phone would blow up," Mike said. Some sales rep in Vancouver couldn't figure out how to enter a discount code and needed help immediately because the client was waiting. They decided to stagger his and his IT colleagues' shift times. Mike would start at 6 a.m. and work till 2:30, and his colleague, a guy named Derek, would start at 10:30 a.m. and work till 7 p.m. Derek had kids and refused the shift change. "I can't do those hours," Derek told their manager. "I need to pick my kids up from school. That's non-negotiable." The manager, Jennifer, crossed her arms and said, "Well, the company needs coverage during those hours. Either you adjust your schedule or we'll find someone who will." Derek quit the next day. That meant that Mike was the only person in the IT department. The employer said they would look to hire a new IT guy, but they had trouble finding one that knew the ERP system, and they were offering well under a market value salary. Mike asked for a raise and was denied. Then he wanted overtime, and the employer told him that as an IT specialist, he was exempt from overtime laws in Ontario. Mike looked it up, and the employer was correct. This went on for some time, and he knew lots of IT people socially. They told him what the company was offering, and Mike knew that they wouldn't find another tech. "You're asking for someone with 5 years of experience with this specific ERP system plus network admin skills for $65,000, Mike told Jennifer. "Good luck with that. Market rate is at least $95,000. Jennifer just shrugged. "That's what the budget allows. Take it or leave it." Things went downhill from there. Mike would get chewed out if he missed a call or an email, no matter what time it came in. He had to train new hires in the ERP system as well as take care of the hardware. He asked repeatedly for better compensation and was denied, so he planned to get a new job. Now here's the revenge. Mike had access to the entirety of the ERP program. When a user signed in, the time was logged, and even if they didn't sign out, after 15 minutes it would log them out anyway. Everyone in the company was on salary, and many of them came in early and stayed late. Ontario labor law states that even salaried workers are entitled to overtime after 44 hours a week, unless they were managers or supervisors. So Mike jumped into the program and ran a report for each employee that wasn't a manager, all the way back to when the ERP program was started. Then he reached out to an employment lawyer and got the okay to refer employees to him. "What exactly am I looking at here?" asked the lawyer, Sarah Chen, as she reviewed the data. "These are login timestamps for every employee," Mike explained. "They show exactly when people started and stopped working. And as you can see, most of them regularly put in 50, 60-hour weeks without any overtime pay." Sarah smiled. "This is very interesting. Very interesting indeed." Mike lined up another job, and after he left, every employee in the company got an email with an Excel sheet showing the hours they had put in past 44 hours a week. The subject line said, "You're legally entitled to overtime pay." In the body of the email was the lawyer's name and contact information. The crap hit the fan. Almost every employee authorized the lawyer to negotiate with the company on their behalf, and the company had to pay a ton of money. One of Mike's former colleagues, Priya from accounting, called him a week later. "You would not believe what's happening here," she said, laughing. "Jennifer is losing her mind. The CEO flew in from Montreal and has been in meetings with lawyers for 3 days straight. They're estimating back pay in the hundreds of thousands. All the company had to do was pay Mike for the extra work he put in. Instead, they had to pay almost everyone. Best part?" Mike told his brother with a grin. "I got a much better job with actual work-life balance, and I hear they still haven't found anyone to replace me." The next one is an entitled People Story. I work as a building and code enforcement inspector for the county. It's not the most glamorous job, but it pays the bills, and honestly, I like helping people understand building codes and keeping neighborhoods safe. Most of my days involve checking permits, reviewing construction projects, and occasionally dealing with code violations. The key word there is occasionally, because most people in our county are pretty reasonable about maintaining their properties. Then I moved into Meadowbrook HOA community and I met her. The Karen to end all Karens. Let me back up a bit. My wife and I bought our house about 2 years ago. Nice, quiet neighborhood, reasonable HOA fees, and the homes were well maintained. The HOA president seemed normal during our initial meeting, and the rules were pretty standard stuff. Keep your lawn mowed, no bright pink houses, no parking RVs in the driveway permanently. All made sense. What we didn't know was that the HOA president had a second-in-command who treated the neighborhood like her personal fiefdom. Let's call her HOA Karen because that's exactly what she was. She was on every committee, attended every meeting, and had opinions about everything everyone did. From the moment we moved in, she watched our house like a hawk. The first incident happened about 3 months after we moved in. I was repainting our front door a nice dark blue color. It was within the approved HOA color palette I had checked, but HOA Karen marched over while I was mid-brushstroke and informed me the shade was too dark and that I needed to repaint it a lighter blue. I showed her the approved color chart, pointed to the exact shade I was using, and she huffed off muttering about how she'd be keeping an eye on us. After that, it was a steady stream of nitpicking. Our grass was a 1/4 inch too tall one week. Our holiday decorations went up 2 days before the allowed date. Our garbage cans were visible from the street for 20 minutes after trash pickup. Every single tiny thing that could possibly be interpreted as a violation, she found it and reported it. The thing is, I'm pretty meticulous about following rules. It's literally my job to know codes and regulations, so every time she filed a complaint with the HOA, I had documentation proving I was in compliance. Photos with timestamps, measurements, copies of the relevant HOA bylaws highlighted and annotated. I wasn't trying to be difficult, I just don't like being accused of things I didn't do. This apparently made HOA Karen even more determined to find anything to nail me with. The situation came to a head last spring. I had some work done on my driveway. Nothing major, just had some cracks sealed and the whole thing resurfaced. It looked great, way better than it had when we bought the house. I had pulled the proper permits through the county, had a licensed contractor do the work, and everything was completed to code. I even had the required inspections done by one of my colleagues at work to avoid any conflict of interest. 2 days after the work was finished, HOA Karen was standing in my driveway with a measuring tape. I watched from my window as she measured the width, the setback from the property line, the distance to the sidewalk. She was out there for 45 minutes taking notes and photos. That weekend, I got a certified letter from the HOA. HOA Karen had filed a formal complaint alleging that my driveway expansion violated county setback requirements and that I had done unpermitted work. The letter demanded I provide proof of permits and warned that they would be reporting the violation to the county code enforcement office if I didn't remedy the situation immediately. Here's the thing, I hadn't expanded the driveway at all. I had resurfaced the existing driveway within its original footprint, and I had permits. But HOA Karen was so convinced she had finally caught me in a violation that she didn't bother to verify her facts first. I wrote back to the HOA with copies of my permits, photos showing the driveway hadn't changed dimensions, and a polite explanation that resurfacing doesn't require the same permitting as new construction or expansion. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The following Monday, I arrived at my office at the county building department and found a formal code violation complaint in my queue. Someone had reported my property for unpermitted driveway work, alleging it violated setback requirements and possibly encroached on county right-of-way. The complaint was filed by none other than HOA Karen, complete with her photos and measurements. I sat there staring at my computer screen, a slow smile spreading across my face. She had no idea she'd just reported a property to the very inspector who would be handling the case. She had no idea that I was the county inspector she'd threatened to report me to. Now, I pride myself on being professional, but the request here was clear. Investigate the alleged violation at my property address. And investigate I would, thoroughly, meticulously, by the book. I assigned the case to myself, which was allowed since the complaint had come through official channels and I could document everything properly. Then I started planning my inspection. The rules are pretty clear about code enforcement inspections. When we receive a complaint about a property, we're authorized to inspect not just the specific issue reported, but any visible code violations on the property and, in neighborhoods with multiple complaints, surrounding properties as well. It's in the County Code, Section 12, 4, subsection B. Most people don't know this. I scheduled my inspection for the following Thursday. I sent official notice to my own address, as required by law. I also sent notices to the HOA and to every property on my street, informing them that a code enforcement inspection would be conducted in the neighborhood and that the inspector might need to examine multiple properties to resolve the complaint. Thursday morning, I put on my official county inspector polo shirt, grabbed my clipboard and camera, and drove my clearly marked county vehicle to my neighborhood. Several neighbors were outside, curious about what was happening. HOA Karen was standing on her lawn, arms crossed, watching as I pulled up to my house. I started with my property naturally. I measured every dimension of my driveway, documented that it was within the original footprint, verified the setbacks met code requirements, and photographed my permits and inspection certificates. My driveway was perfect, completely legal, properly permitted, zero violations. I documented everything thoroughly. Then I moved on to the neighboring properties. This is where things got interesting. The house to my left had a small shed that was about 2 feet over the setback line, not permitted. The house across the street had added a deck without pulling permits. 3 houses down had an illegal apartment conversion in their garage. None of these were major violations, but they were violations nonetheless. And then I got to HOA Karen's house. Oh boy, where do I even start? Her driveway was actually expanded, unlike mine, and it extended a good 18 inches into the county setback, unpermitted. Her fence was 6 inches too tall for our zoning district, also unpermitted. She had a storage shed that violated setback requirements on 2 sides, unpermitted. Her deck had been extended without permits, and from what I could see, the railing didn't meet current code requirements for spacing and height. I documented everything. Photos from multiple angles, detailed measurements, notes about each violation, references to the specific code sections that were violated. I was nothing if not thorough, but I wasn't done yet. See, HOA Karen had mentioned in her complaint that several other properties in the neighborhood also had driveway issues and that the county should investigate all of them. She'd actually listed 5 other addresses in her complaint, presumably trying to build a case that our neighborhood had widespread violations and that the county wasn't doing its job. So I inspected those properties too. Every single one she had listed. 2 of them had minor violations, but 3 of them? Completely fine. Just like mine. Back at the office, I compiled my report. It took me 3 days to write it all up properly, documenting every finding, attaching all photos and measurements, and noting which violations required immediate correction versus which ones could be brought into compliance within a longer time frame. The report on my property took up exactly 2 pages, 1 page documenting the inspection, 1 page confirming 0 violations found and case closed. The report on HOA Karen's property took up 11 pages. I sent out all the official notices of violation as required by county code. Each property owner received a certified letter detailing the violations found, the code sections violated, the timeline for correction, and the fines that would be assessed for non-compliance. HOA. Karen received her letter on a Tuesday. By Wednesday morning, she was in the county building department office, demanding to speak to whoever had conducted the inspection. The front desk called me, and I walked out to meet her. The look on her face when she saw me was absolutely priceless. Recognition dawned slowly, then disbelief, then anger, then panic. She tried to argue that I couldn't have inspected my own property, that it was a conflict of interest, that she was going to report me to my supervisor. I calmly explained that I had followed all proper procedures, that I had documented everything thoroughly, that my inspection of my own property showed 0 violations, and that I had only inspected the other properties because she had specifically requested it in her complaint. My supervisor backed me up completely when HOA Karen tried to file a grievance. I had done everything by the book. I had been professional, thorough, and fair. The fact that my property was in compliance and hers wasn't was simply a reflection of reality. HOA Karen had to pay for permits for all her unpermitted work, retroactively. She had to pay fines for the violations. She had to hire contractors to bring everything up to code. The fence had to be shortened. The driveway had to be reduced. The shed had to be moved. The deck railing had to be rebuilt. All told, it cost her somewhere north of $15,000. The best part, the HOA board reviewed her conduct and removed her from all committee positions for filing a frivolous complaint against a neighbor without verifying her facts first. Turns out several other neighbors had been on the receiving end of her harassment too, and my situation gave them the courage to speak up. My driveway looks great, still perfectly legal, still properly permitted, and now with an official county inspection report confirming it meets all requirements. I learned an important lesson from all this. Sometimes the best revenge is simply doing your job exactly as you're supposed to. HOA Karen wanted the county to investigate, and investigate I did. She just didn't expect the inspector to be quite so thorough, or to be her neighbor. The first one is a petty revenge story. I was on an airplane, and right when we landed, a Karen in the back unbuckled and darted to the front of the plane to get off first. She did not make any eye contact and felt that she was special. I'm talking about going from the very last seat on the plane, down the whole row and past first class, basically standing at the little kitchen thing in the front. All this time, the seatbelt sign was still on and we were still rolling down the runway. The flight crew had asked her to return to her seat until we reached the gate, but she was not even responding. Everyone was basically trying to just wait it out. It was a long flight, 8 HRs, and at this point we were exhausted anyways. Nobody said a word. Suddenly, the captain announced we had a special guest on board and he will be coming out to greet after we were settled at the gate. The Karen stood there awkwardly until we did the whole rolling into the gate and whatever planes do when they land for about 15, 20 minutes. Everyone sat there waiting to see what the captain was talking about. Eventually, the captain came out and asked the lady to please move back a little to get to his special guest, then a little more, then a little more. He was looking from row to row trying to find a specific person. Everyone is watching and looking around to see who it could be. He kept going and going, asking the Karen to please step back a few more steps each time. Finally, as they approached the rear of the plane, he asked her to sit for a second while he grabbed the intercom at the rear of the plane. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to announce our special guest sitting in seat 42C. Let's give her a round of applause. The whole plane was wild with laughter and applause. I loved every moment of that. The next one is a malicious compliance story. A little over a decade ago, I worked up in the oil patch in northern Canada on different IT contracts. The current contract I was on was maintaining virtual meeting rooms. The oil company had decided that if you didn't need to be on site, they would move your job south and pay you 25 to 50% less. When you needed to meet with people on site, you'd book a meeting and all is golden. The IT company I was with was amazing, but they lost the contract to an international IT company A, servicing oil company B. I was one of the fortunate few that got a job with IT company A, which was so unbelievably stupid. Most of the rest of the talent that had been working IT under contracting companies for 10 plus years took a walk. I think the management literally sat down and said, "What's the absolute worst way we can mess things up?" And then they did that. They hired a bunch of fresh out of college or unqualified people, and within a few months our ticket count had gone from averaging around 50 at any given time to well over 600 and growing with no end in sight. This is all well and good, and we got chewed out for the ticket count being high. We got chewed out for bringing it down low because our ticket closure rates weren't similar. It didn't really matter. Good, bad, we got chewed out. Company A was hemorrhaging money to Company B. Like every ticket outside of the allowed failures that was a failure and not resolved was a fine. And there were multiple sites. Basically, IT Company A ended up paying Oil Company B to do IT for them. Most salaried oil company employee who had computer problems took weeks or months to get problems solved, but they were salaried and it didn't affect oil coming out of the ground, so it didn't matter, except for the meeting rooms. Managers couldn't have virtual meetings with staff, things were getting delayed, and it was going to affect oil coming out of the ground, so it was a problem. The 12 of us working there were given full-time work and 6 vehicles. The supervisor took one for himself for driving to and from town and wouldn't let anyone use it during the day, so that left 5 vehicles. It used to be that we were dedicated to a specific type of work, but now everyone did everything, and we were expected to just check the meeting rooms as we drove by, or if we had a ticket in that building. So all the meeting room maintenance was just not being done, and the new guys that would get a ticket to facilitate a virtual meeting of the vice presidents, directors, etc. of the oil company would just not show up and the meeting would fail. During this time, I had been loudly and constantly complaining about our inability to check meeting rooms in buildings that we don't have tickets for when we don't have a vehicle to get there anyways. A coworker told me that one of IT Company A's managers had come north to review the situation, was at lunch, saw one of my emails, said, "I'm not reading that," tossed down his phone and ate his lunch. So I just gave up, gave in, and did what I was told. I had been busting my ass to keep everything working for all the execs of Oil Company B for months, and it was time to cue malicious compliance. There was a building in town with meeting rooms. Our building on site was around 45 minutes north. Every morning, rather than being on site and working at 7, I would be at the town building at 8, checking a meeting room, stocking it with supplies, and FXing problems. Except I wasn't because it was in use and I couldn't get in. So I would drive north and get to our building around 9 and start my day, do a few tickets, be one of the only ones that the oil execs saw that could actually make meetings run successfully, and then leave at 2 to go check a meeting room I couldn't get into and then go home. This lasted about a month before the oil execs called in my supervisor, manager, and manager's manager and said something along the lines of, "Put I_identifies Astartes on doing just meeting rooms and meetings." I got called into a meeting with my supervisor. Most of my other work was taken away. I was given my own vehicle, and I was told to check all the meeting rooms every week, a 4-person job, and to take care of all of the exec meetings. I told my supervisor that it wasn't physically possible for me to be in 3 or 4 places at once to check all the meeting rooms. He didn't care how I did it, just get it done. So I got it done. Every time we checked a meeting room, we had to scan a QR code with a company phone that we would then export into Excel and submit as the rooms we checked. Every minute of every day, I clicked the scan button and scanned nothing. At the end of the week, I would export to Excel, then get the list of all the room codes, randomize them, paste them in, save, and submit. Click I'm in town checking a room. 1 minute later, click I'm 30 kilometers north. 1 minute later, click I'm 70 kilometers across the river, etc. I breezed through rest of my stay there, attending exec meetings and keeping them happy, starting late and ending early, with my own dedicated vehicle. I applied for a new job, was approved, and just had to wait on the background check. My start date was given at about 6 months out, and I was set. I planned a 3-week vacation at IT Company A, months in advance, and then on my last day before vacation, I handed in my 3 weeks' notice and left. I had made some good friends there. I kept getting invited to the social events for some time, and my understanding from the new people is that they ended up hiring more people, had put 4 people on meeting rooms, and still couldn't get the work done, because no one ever bothered to learn it. Eventually, the IT company lost the contract. The next one is an entitled people story. This took place over 20 years ago when I was in high school. I was really into our local hockey team at the time, and I had acquired 6 tickets for a playoff game as I had planned on inviting some friends to go with me. All but one of my friends bailed on me at the last minute, and because no one in my family cared for hockey, I ended up inviting my last friend's family to the game as they loved local sports in general. Things were going okay at first, but about 10 minutes after sitting down, my friend's dad taps me on the shoulder. The family sat in the row behind my friend and I, and with his hand out declares that his family is thirsty and hungry. I said okay, not really knowing why he was telling me or why he was holding his hand out, and he continued on saying that things are tight at home right now and they can't afford to buy drinks or food. I felt bad seeing as I dragged them to this game, so I decided I would go and buy hot dogs, fries, and sodas for everyone. Some of the family was disappointed by the food they got, but I had to apologize and tell them that it was all I could afford. I had $20 left on me, hoping to save it for gas later. However, just before halftime, they were selling pucks that you signed, and during halftime, they would ask everyone to throw their pucks onto the ice, and whoever was closest to the center wins a $500 gift card to Staples. I decided on spending my last $20 to buy 6 tickets, as I had been playing this game for years and never won. So I finally get the pucks all signed and ready to throw when I feel that ducking tap on my shoulder again, and I turn to see the same outstretched hand and pitiful look as my friend's dad asked when I was going to hand them out to them. I originally planned on saying I wasn't, but I was 16 and had zero backbone, so I reluctantly handed 5 of them over so everyone got a shot, all of them scratching out my name and putting theirs instead, which only further annoyed me. After the chaos of flying forbidden wagon wheels, they announced the winner, and for the first time in my life, I won something. And it was huge. I was so ducking happy. I have to go into the center ice to accept the prize, and the entire family follows suit. I get my prize and have my pictures taken, and that was that, until we all sat down. Not even a minute after getting settled, I feel the familiar tapping on my shoulders, and I'm straight up considering breaking his dick skinners at this point. I turn around and he asks how we were all going to split the prize. I legitimately laughed until I saw my friend giving me a dirty look, and I realized he was dead serious. I told him I was planning on saving the gift card for when I go to college so I can buy a laptop and school supplies. He sighed dramatically and said, "Well, that's not very fair to us, is it?" I told him I already gave his entire family a free chance at winning, as well as a free meal and free ducking tickets. What more does he need from me? He, of course, answered by saying that his family were guests because I invited them, and guests should always get what they desire. Also, how it's my duty to look after my guests and pay for everything they need, all because I asked them to come to a game with me and my friend. He genuinely got me feeling really guilty about everything, so I caved and split the $500 6 ways. Because I was told I was being greedy when I offered them all half of the $500, and they could split the $250 amongst themselves. This caused a blow up in the parking lot, and I relented and said fine. We went straight to Staples after the game, and I had seen so many things I wanted and needed but could no longer afford with my measly $84. I ended up buying candy and had grabbed 2 games, but my friend and her family were sneaky and got a laptop for over $480, leaving me with basically enough to buy some candy, and that's it. The crappy thing is they had taken the gift card from me at some point and bought the laptop quietly before giving me the card and telling me I can use the rest with dumbass smiles on their faces. I only found out I had less than $20 left after trying to buy the games, but getting declined. By this point, the family was in their car, and when I got there, I was fuming and was ready to tear into them, but they cranked up the music and ignored me. I completely disowned that friend that night and never spoke to her ever again. I got to watch her bring her new laptop to school, though, which flash-boiled my piss. I hate myself for being such a spineless coward, and I have no one to blame for this but myself. I know that now. I just couldn't believe how entitled her entire family was. She seemed totally normal, and the few times I met the family, they seemed equally normal. But her dad ended up being a freaking psycho. Anyways, that's my story. No climax or conclusion, just a blue ball robbery. The next one is an entitled parent story. A little bit of context before I start the story. My first job back when I was a freshman was a program attendant at one of those city fairs. For this job, I was situated in a small little park-like field, which consisted of several tents each, with an activity for the kids to do with their families. Anyway, on the day that the incident that this story is about happened, I was situated at a tent where you could design little toys like a pinwheels, folding fans, paper masks, and things like that. All was going well when suddenly an uncle and his 3 nieces came in and started coloring a tote bag. All was going well until the uncle asked me if there were any chargers, to which I told him that there were not any that I knew of in my area, but if he wanted he could go to the guest services building where they have all kinds of chargers. Apple, Android, USB, etc. Sadly, he said it was too far considering his nieces were not done the activity yet, so he asked if we at least had an outlet. The thing was, since the activity was in a vast open park, there were no outlets, so I suggested he could check in the building where the washrooms are. He did and nothing, so he was starting to get desperate, so finally I gave him the option to go ask the folks in the sound tent. Since they have all the equipment for performers, chances are they have an outlet of some sort. After this, he told the niece that he would be right back, and away he went. The problem was, on the way he tried to unplug one of the speakers that the performers use. Luckily, I was able to stop him. Once he was gone, I continued walking through the activity with the nieces as the sound tent was within view, so I was not too worried. After a little while, they were done with the activity, but the uncle has not come back. Now I was little worried, but the oldest niece said she would go get him, and off she went as I moved on to the next family. As I was going through with the second family, I suddenly saw the niece come back, but when I looked up, she was not with her uncle, she was with one of the supervisors. I asked what happened, and she said that the niece came up to her and sadly asked where her uncle was. Now I was concerned. The #1 rule at the youth zone is kids must be supervised at all times, and this guy just ran off. I asked if the niece had any way to contact him, to which she said that she did not have his phone number, but she could call her dad, who could call her uncle. At first we were all relieved, but then I pointed out an issue. If he was looking for a charger when he left, chances are his phone was dead by now, so all we could really do was try to find him. The good news was we found him after about an hour, and you'll never believe where he was. On the stage where all the kiddie performers are, magicians, costume characters, children's bands, etc., and trying to unplug one of their speakers just like what he tried to do at the small stage earlier. Now, this is where we get to rule #2, and that is that there are only 3 people allowed on the main stage. 1. Performers. 2. Staff. 3. Audience members when invited by performers and when there are no performances. Nobody is allowed on the stage whatsoever. So the supervisor went to talk to him and I could not hear the conversation, but I could tell she was furious considering she was doing all these hand motions, and when the uncle got back he was very sheepish and quickly told his nieces it was time to leave. Now, this might seem more like a dumb caregiver story rather than an entitled one, but this is the part where the entitlement comes in. After my shift, the supervisor gave her part of the story. She said that during the conversation, he said that they do not have enough outlets, to which she was dumbfounded and said, "Where can we put them? It's an empty field." Then got mad as the speakers are like $1,000 equipment, and he was not only going to an off-limits area but messing with the equipment. So this guy broke 3 fair rules just because he didn't plan ahead, then put the blame on us when we didn't even design the area. Anyway, thank you for watching.